I never expected to find my father's last words in the false bottom of his old cigar box. Not on what was supposed to be a simple afternoon of sorting through his belongings with my fiancé Callum, but there it was, a cream-colored envelope with my name written in Dad's distinctive scrawl. My name is Rowan, and until that moment, I thought I had processed my grief over losing my father 6 months ago. I was wrong. "What's that, darling?" Callum asked, peering over my shoulder as I held the envelope. His cologne, usually comforting, felt suddenly overwhelming in the stuffy attic of my childhood home. "I'm not sure." My fingers trembled as I traced Dad's handwriting. It was hidden in his favorite cigar box. Callum reached for the envelope, but I instinctively pulled it closer. Something about finding this letter, this secret, made me want to keep it to myself. Just for a moment. "Come on, love. Share with the class," he said with that charming smile that usually melted my defenses. But not this time. "I think I need some air," I managed, already heading for the attic stairs. "Could you finish boxing up the rest?" I didn't wait for his response. My heels clicked against the hardwood as I made my way to Dad's study, the one room in the house that still felt like him. The leather chair creaked as I sat behind his massive oak desk, the envelope now feeling heavier than it should. Inside, I found 2 pages filled with Dad's precise handwriting. "My dearest Rowan, if you're reading this, then either I'm gone, or you've become as nosy as your mother. I'm betting on the former, though I hope I'm wrong. There are things I need to tell you, things I should have said while I was alive. But timing and courage failed me, and now I can only hope this letter finds you before it's too late." You're probably wondering why I hid this letter. The truth is, I've discovered something that changes everything, about our family's legacy, about the people close to you, and about the fortune everyone thinks I've left behind. Trust your instincts, sweetheart. They've always been sharper than mine. When something feels wrong, it usually is. Watch carefully those who seem most interested in what I've left behind. Not everything, or everyone, is what they appear to be. In my office safe combination your birthday, you'll find documents that will explain everything. But be discreet. Share this information with no one except your mother. She knows more than she lets on. Most importantly, remember that real wealth isn't always measured in dollars and cents. Sometimes it's measured in the wisdom to know who to trust. I love you, my girl. Stay strong. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, my heart pounding harder with each pass. What was Dad trying to tell me? And why the secrecy? A floorboard creaked behind me, and I quickly folded the letter, shoving it into my pocket. Callum appeared in the doorway, his smile slightly strained. "Found you," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "Everything okay?" "You rushed out rather quickly." "Just needed a moment," I replied, forcing a smile. "Dad stuff, you know? More emotional than I expected." He nodded sympathetically, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. Or maybe it was just Dad's words making me paranoid. "Speaking of your father's things," Callum said, his tone carefully casual. "Have you given any more thought to when we might meet with the estate lawyer? Just to get everything sorted before the wedding." The question seemed innocent enough, but combined with Dad's warning, it hit differently. Why was my fiancé so interested in my father's estate? "Soon," I said vaguely, my hand unconsciously touching the letter in my pocket. "There's still a lot to process." As Callum nodded and turned to leave, I glanced at the painting behind Dad's desk, the one concealing his safe. Whatever secrets lay behind it would have to wait until I was alone. But one thing was certain, nothing about this felt right. And Dad had taught me to trust my gut. I barely slept that night, Dad's letter burning a hole in my thoughts. The next morning, as I opened my boutique, my phone buzzed with a message from Callum. "Mother insists on treating you to lunch. The plaza at 1? She won't take no for an answer." Great. Just what I needed. An afternoon with Gwendolyn Hayes and her surgical smile. The morning crawled by as I helped customers, my mind elsewhere. At 12:55, I walked into the plaza's restaurant, spotting them immediately. Gwendolyn rose to greet me, her designer outfit perfectly coordinated, not a silver hair out of place. "Darling," she air-kissed both my cheeks. "You look exhausted. Wedding planning keeping you up?" "Just busy with the boutique," I said, sliding into my seat. Callum squeezed my hand under the table, but something felt off about his touch. Speaking of the boutique, Gwendolyn said, sipping her martini, Callum tells me you're still operating out of that quaint little space downtown. Have you considered expanding? Now that you'll have access to more resources. I felt my shoulders tense. The current location works perfectly for my needs. But surely with your father's estate settled, Callum began. Which hasn't happened yet. I cut in sharper than intended. The waiter's arrival provided a welcome interruption. Throughout lunch, Gwendolyn steered the conversation repeatedly toward my father's business dealings, each question wrapped in a layer of saccharine concern. Arthur was such a brilliant businessman. He must have taught you so much about investing, dear. Dad believed in learning by doing, I replied carefully. He let me make my own mistakes. How noble, Gwendolyn said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Though I hope he left you better prepared for managing his estate. Such responsibility can be overwhelming for someone used to running a small shop. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. Need to see you. Important. Come by the house after work. Excuse me, I said, standing abruptly. Emergency at the boutique. I need to go. But we haven't discussed the wedding venue options, Gwendolyn protested. Another time. I grabbed my purse, avoiding Callum's questioning look. As I reached the restaurant's entrance, I realized I'd forgotten my scarf. Turning back, I froze at the sound of their voices from around the corner. She's becoming difficult, Gwendolyn hissed. If she starts digging too deeply before the wedding. I've got it under control, Mother, Callum interrupted. Once we're married, accessing the estate will be simple. Rowan trusts me. Does she? That display just now suggests otherwise. We can't afford another failure, Callum. The bank won't extend. I said I've got it handled, Callum snapped. Just stick to the plan. My hands shook as I pushed through the revolving door into the street. The cool air did nothing to calm the nausea rising in my throat. Dad's warning echoed in my head. Watch carefully those who seem most interested in what I've left behind. At 6, I pulled up to my childhood home, finding Mom in the garden. She looked up from her roses, her expression grave. I found something in Dad's study, she said without preamble. Something you need to see. She led me inside, pulling out a folder filled with bank statements and legal documents. Your father knew something was coming. He started moving assets around 3 months before he died. What are you saying? I'm saying the estate everyone's so interested in, it's not what they think. She hesitated. And Callum's family? They're not who they pretend to be. Mom, what do you know about them? She opened her mouth to answer, but her phone rang, Gwendolyn's name flashing on the screen. Mom declined the call with a grimace. She's been calling all day, wanting to catch up, Mom said. Listen to me carefully, Rowan. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And whatever you do, don't tell them about. The doorbell rang, cutting her off. Through the front window, I caught a glimpse of Callum's familiar silhouette. Back door, Mom whispered, shoving the folder into my hands. Go. We'll talk tomorrow. As I slipped out through the garden, I heard Callum's voice. Evening, Lila. Is Rowan here? We need to discuss the wedding plans. I clutched the folder to my chest, my engagement ring suddenly feeling like a dead weight on my finger. What exactly had I gotten myself into? I spent the night poring over the documents Mom had given me, each page revealing another crack in the perfect facade of my life. By morning, my dining room table looked like a crime scene investigation, with papers spread everywhere and my father's letter propped against an empty wine glass. The doorbell rang at 7 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw Mom, looking like she hadn't slept either. You need to see this, she said, brushing past me with a laptop. I've been up all night digging through your father's old emails. The Hayes family, they've done this before. She pulled up article after article. Different names, different cities, but the same pattern. Wealthy families, sudden marriages, mysterious bankruptcies. They're not even using their real names, Mom said, her voice tight. Gwendolyn Hayes was Gwendolyn Porter 5 years ago. And Callum? My phone buzzed. Callum's face lit up the screen. Don't answer, Mom whispered. I let it go to voicemail, but my hands were shaking. I need to check the safe, I said. Dad's safe in his study. He mentioned it in the letter. 20 minutes later, we stood in Dad's study. I entered my birthday into the safe's keypad, hearing the satisfying click. Inside, we found more documents, a USB drive, and a small red notebook. Your father's private ledger, Mom said, reaching for it. The front door opened downstairs. Callum's voice echoed through the house. Rowan? Your car's outside. Are you here? Mom shoved the notebook into my hands. Backstairs. Go. I'll handle him. I slipped out just as Callum's footsteps reached the study. Lila. I didn't expect to find you here. My house, remember? The better question is why you're here, letting yourself in without knocking. Their voices faded as I made my way through the garden. In my car, I opened the notebook with trembling fingers. Numbers, dates, and names filled the pages. But one entry made my blood run cold. Hayes connection confirmed. Same group from the Morrison case. Protecting Rowan must come first. My phone buzzed again, a text from Callum. Where are you? We need to talk about the wedding. Mother's worried you're having doubts. Another text followed. By the way, did you remove anything from your father's study? Some papers seemed to be missing. The calm mask I'd been wearing cracked. I started my car and drove to the one place I could think clearly, my boutique. But as I unlocked the door, I found Gwendolyn waiting inside. Security let me in, she said smoothly. We need to talk, dear. How did you know you'd come here? You're so like your father, always retreating to work when things get complicated. Her smile turned sharp. He did the same thing, right before he died. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. What do you know about my father's death? Only that stress can do terrible things to a person's heart. She examined her manicured nails. Especially when they're trying to protect certain secrets. My phone buzzed again. Callum, found the safe open. Mother's waiting at your shop. Let's talk this through like family. Gwendolyn continued. Marriages are about trust. About sharing everything, including burdens, secrets, inheritances. I thought about Dad's warning, about Mom's discoveries, about the notebook burning a hole in my bag, about all the signs I'd ignored because I wanted to believe in love. You're right, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Let's talk about trust. And about the Morrison case. Gwendolyn's perfectly composed face flickered for just a moment. I don't know what you're. Or should I call you Mrs. Porter? I pulled out my phone, showing her the articles Mom had found. That was your name when you pulled this same scam in Seattle, wasn't it? The shop's door chimed. Callum walked in, his face dark. Rowan, whatever you think you know. I know enough, I cut him off, backing toward my office. And soon everyone else will too. I hadn't planned what to say next. But as I looked at their faces, Gwendolyn's mask of concern cracking, Callum's charm turning to something uglier, I realized Dad had been preparing me for this moment all along. The question was, what would I do with the truth? I decided to play their game. After the confrontation at my boutique, I pretended to accept Callum's explanations, his promises, his lies. But I kept digging, and what I found made my stomach turn. The USB drive from Dad's safe contained emails, hundreds of them. Correspondence between Dad and someone named Marcus Morrison. As I read through them late one night, my hands started shaking. Arthur, they're getting closer. Gwendolyn Porter and her son have already emptied the Peterson account. Sarah Peterson killed herself last week. We can't let them do this to another family. My phone lit up with a text from Callum. Late meeting. Rain check on dinner. I grabbed my keys and drove to his office building downtown. His car was there, but the lights were off in his window. The security guard recognized me. Mr. Hayes left about an hour ago with a woman. Headed toward the Archer Hotel. The Archer. Of course. Where else would you take your secret girlfriend while your fiancé sits at home, reading about how you destroyed other families? I found his car in the hotel parking lot. Sitting there, watching the entrance, I felt oddly calm, like everything was finally making sense. The rushed engagement, the constant questions about Dad's estate, the way he always changed the subject when I mentioned prenuptial agreements. My phone buzzed. Mom, don't do anything rash. Come home. There's more you need to know. But I was already walking into the hotel, Dad's voice echoing in my head. Trust your instincts. The desk clerk didn't even hesitate when I mentioned being Callum's fiancé. Oh yes, Mr. Hayes is in the bar with Miss Peterson. Peterson. Like Sarah Peterson, who killed herself. They were sitting in a corner booth, heads close together. The woman was young, beautiful, and wearing an engagement ring that looked exactly like mine. I walked straight to their table, phone recording in my pocket. Callum, darling. Funny running into you here during your late meeting. He jumped like he'd been shocked. Rowan. I can explain. Let me guess, I said, turning to the woman. He told you about his family's investment firm? About how he could help manage your inheritance. And of course, he fell madly in love with you along the way. The woman's face went pale. Who are you? I'm his fiancé. One of them anyway. And I'm guessing you're related to Sarah Peterson. My sister, she whispered. How did you? Because my father tried to stop them before they killed her. I pulled out my phone, showing her the emails. They've done this before. Multiple times. Callum's charm vanished, replaced by something cold and hard. You've been going through private documents? Funny how you're more worried about that than being caught with your other fiancé. He grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. Let's discuss this privately. Take your hand off her. The new voice belonged to a man standing behind us, tall, gray-haired, familiar from photos in Dad's emails. Marcus Morrison. Miss Everly, he said, your father asked me to watch over you if anything happened to him. I've been waiting for you to figure it out. Callum's grip tightened. This is a private matter. Actually, said another voice mom, walking in with 2 police detectives, it's now a criminal matter. Fraud, theft, and conspiracy charges tend to be very public. Callum released my arm, his face twisting. You don't understand. My mother is already in custody, one detective said. We picked her up trying to access your father's business accounts 20 minutes ago. As they led Callum away, I sat down heavily in the booth. The other woman, Peterson's sister, was crying quietly. I almost fell for it too, I told her. They're very good at what they do. Mom sat beside me, holding my hand. Your father would be proud. He spent years trying to expose them. Did they? I couldn't finish the question. We can't prove they caused your father's heart attack, Marcus said quietly. But the stress of trying to protect you from them certainly didn't help. I twisted my engagement ring off my finger, feeling its weight one last time. Then let's finish what Dad started. The ring clattered onto the table, and with it, the last of my illusions about love and trust. But something stronger was taking their place, a determination to make things right, to protect others from falling into the same trap. Dad had tried to warn me. Now it was my turn to warn others. The morning after Callum's arrest, I sat in Marcus Morrison's office, surrounded by evidence of my father's secret crusade. Files, photos, and financial records covered every surface, each telling a story of another family destroyed by the Hayes schemes. Your father wasn't just tracking them, Marcus said, sliding a thick folder across his desk. He was building a case. But he needed absolute proof of their connection to Sarah Peterson's death. I opened the folder, finding photographs of Callum with different women, all wearing similar engagement rings. All from wealthy families. All now bankrupt or worse. Why didn't Dad just go to the police? Marcus's expression darkened. He tried. But Gwendolyn had connections in high places. Each time we got close, charges would mysteriously disappear. Witnesses would recant. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We should talk. About Arthur. About what really happened to him. Gee. Gwendolyn, I whispered, showing Marcus the message. He reached for his phone, but I stopped him. Wait. Maybe we should hear what she has to say. It's too dangerous. Dad died trying to stop them. I need to know why. The county jail's visiting room was cold and sterile. Gwendolyn sat across from me, her designer outfit replaced by an orange jumpsuit, but her composure remained intact. I knew you'd come, she said, studying me. You have your father's curiosity. His determination. It's what got him killed, you know. My hands clenched under the table. What do you mean? Arthur was getting too close. He'd discovered our offshore accounts, our connections to certain influential people. People who couldn't afford exposure. She leaned forward. But he made a mistake. He tried to warn the wrong person. Who? Check his calendar for March 15th. The day before his heart attack. Her smile turned predatory. But be careful, dear. Some truths are better left buried. Back at Dad's house, I found his old planner in his desk. March 15th had a single entry. Dinner, Judge Matthews. My blood ran cold. Judge Matthews. The same judge who had dismissed 3 cases against the Hayes family. Mom appeared in the doorway. I was hoping you wouldn't find that. You knew. Your father told me everything the night before he died. He was going to expose Judge Matthews' connection to Gwendolyn. But someone warned them. I stared at her, realization dawning. The morning of his heart attack, you said he had a breakfast meeting with his old friend from the DA's office. Mom's voice cracked. Who happened to be Judge Matthews' brother-in-law? My phone buzzed again, Marcus. Found something in the offshore accounts. Come quickly. At his office, Marcus pulled up financial records on his computer. Look at these transfers. The morning of Arthur's death, someone moved millions between accounts. But the signature algorithm matches. Matches what? Your boutique's corporate account. Someone used your business to launder their money. And the authorization. He pointed to a familiar name on the screen. My heart stopped. The authorization came from my accountant, the one Callum had recommended when we got engaged. They were setting me up, I whispered. If Dad had exposed them, you would have gone down too. Marcus ran a hand through his gray hair. Arthur figured it out too late. He had to choose between exposing them and protecting you. My phone buzzed one last time. Another unknown number, like father, like daughter. Back off or history repeats itself. Some hearts just can't take the strain. I thought about Dad, about his final choice, about the legacy he left me, about justice and revenge, and the fine line between them. We need to end this, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Not just for Dad, but for everyone they've hurt. Marcus nodded grimly. But they're watching you now. One wrong move. Then we'll give them exactly what they're watching for. I pulled out Dad's notebook, flipping to the last page. Dad left a plan. A way to trap them all. Judges, lawyers, everyone. But it's risky. How risky? I met his eyes. I'll have to die first. The plan was insane. Dangerous. Probably illegal. But as I thought about Sarah Peterson, about my father, about all the lives destroyed by greed and corruption, I knew there was no other choice. Sometimes to serve justice, you have to be willing to lose everything. The plan was simple. Fake my own death. Make it look like another victim of the Hayes family schemes. But nothing prepares you for reading your own obituary. Tragic accident claims local businesswoman. The headline read. The article detailed how I'd apparently driven my car off Clayton Bridge after discovering irregularities in my boutique's finances. The same bridge where Sarah Peterson had died. I watched the funeral from Marcus's car, parked far enough away to stay hidden. Mom knew the truth, of course, she had to. But watching her pretend to grieve, seeing the real tears of my employees and friends, it felt like dying for real. Callum showed up in a perfectly tailored black suit, playing the devastated fiancé. Even from a distance, I could see him working the crowd, probably already sizing up his next target. They're taking the bait, Marcus said, checking his phone. Judge Matthews just called an emergency meeting with Gwendolyn's lawyer. But something felt wrong. Callum was too composed, too calculated in his movements. Like he was performing for someone. That night, I snuck into my boutique's office, using the back entrance key I'd never turned in. I needed to check the safe to make sure the evidence we'd planted was still there. The office door was already unlocked. I was wondering when you'd show up. Callum sat in my chair, his feet propped on my desk. Behind him stood Judge Matthews and 2 men I didn't recognize. You really are your father's daughter, Callum said, smiling that charming smile I'd once loved. He tried the same trick. Faking evidence, planning his big reveal. Right up until his heart gave out. Gave out. I kept my voice steady. You mean until you made it give out. Potassium chloride, one of the unknown men said. Untraceable in most toxicology reports. Especially when the victim has a history of heart problems. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just let Dad die, they'd murdered him. The question is, Judge Matthews said, what should we do with you? You can't touch me, I said. Everything's already been sent to the FBI. No, Callum replied, it hasn't. Because Marcus Morrison won't be delivering anything to anyone. My phone buzzed. A photo appeared, Marcus's car, wrapped around a tree. Another accident. You see, Callum continued, standing, we own this city. The police, the judges, even some of those federal agents you were counting on. Your father never understood that. But you will. The two men moved to block the door. Judge Matthews pulled out a small vial. The thing about faking your death, Callum said, is that sometimes it becomes real. I backed away, but my heel caught on the carpet. As I stumbled, I caught a glimpse of movement outside the office window, a flash of gray hair. Before you kill me, I said, playing for time, don't you want to know where the real evidence is? Callum's smile faltered. What real evidence? Dad's backup plan. The one even Marcus didn't know about. I forced a laugh. Did you really think he'd trust everything to one person? The men exchanged glances. Judge Matthews stepped forward. Where is it? In a safe deposit box. Time locked. If I don't enter the code every 24 hours, everything goes public. She's bluffing, Callum snapped, but uncertainty crept into his voice. A siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. Maybe I am, I said. Want to risk it? Because this time, I made sure everyone would know exactly who to blame for my death. The sirens were definitely heading our way now. Judge Matthews grabbed Callum's arm. We need to go. Now. They rushed out the back door, just as police cars screeched to a stop outside. Mom burst in through the front, followed by FBI agents. Real ones this time. Marcus? I asked. Safe, Mom said, hugging me. He called us as soon as he spotted them following you. I sagged against her, the adrenaline draining away. We'd gotten what we needed. Judge Matthews and his thugs on camera, confessing to Dad's murder. But Callum had slipped away again. He'll be back, I said, watching the agents photograph the vial they'd left behind. He won't be able to help himself. Mom squeezed my hand. Then we'll be ready. But as I stood in my darkened office, surrounded by evidence of how deep the corruption went, I wondered if anyone could ever really be ready for what was coming next. 3 days after the confrontation at my boutique, Callum walked right into our trap. He showed up at Dad's estate auction, the one I'd arranged to settle outstanding debts. The great room was packed with potential buyers, but I spotted him immediately, lurking near the back. He'd grown careless, desperate, just as Dad's notes predicted he would. Law 156, the auctioneer announced. Arthur Everly's private safe contents, unopened. Bidding starts at $50,000. Callum's hand shot up immediately. No surprise there. He thought Dad's evidence was inside. I let him win the bid. Congratulations, sir, I said, approaching him afterward. Would you like to open it now? His eyes narrowed. You're supposed to be dead. Sorry to disappoint. Again. I gestured to the safe. Shall we? He followed me to a private room, where Marcus and Mom waited with the FBI agents. But Callum just smiled, that familiar, confident smile that once made me trust him. You still don't get it, do you? He pulled out his phone. One call and certain judges will make sure that all evidence disappears. I opened the safe. Like this evidence? Inside lay a single envelope, addressed to him. What game are you playing? Open it. His hands shook slightly as he tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photo Callum with Judge Matthews, taken the night of Dad's death. There's no proof, he started. Check your phone, Marcus said. Callum's screen lit up with a video security footage from my boutique, showing his entire confession about Dad's murder. Already viral, I said. Every news outlet in the country has it. Judge Matthews was arrested an hour ago. And your mother. I paused. Well, she made a deal. You're lying. But sweat beaded on his forehead. She told him everything, Callum. About Sarah Peterson, about Dad, about all of it. See, that's the thing about people like you and your mother. You never really trust each other. He lunged for the door, but FBI agents blocked his path. One more thing, I said, pulling out Dad's notebook. Remember when I mentioned a safety deposit box? With time-locked evidence. His face went pale. There wasn't one. But you believed it because you knew Dad was smart enough to have a backup plan. Want to know what his real plan was? I opened the notebook to its last page. He knew you'd kill him eventually. Knew you'd come after me next. So he left a trail, breadcrumbs for me to follow, evidence scattered across dozens of accounts and locations, each piece meaningless alone, but together. You're bluffing, he whispered, but his charm had cracked completely. The auction? The safe? All staged. While you were focused on them, FBI agents were raiding every location listed in Dad's notebook. Your entire network is exposed. Callum's composure finally shattered. He spun toward me, rage replacing his usual calculated control. He deserved it. They all deserved it. These self-righteous rich families, looking down on people like us. People like you, I corrected, who think they're entitled to take whatever they want, no matter who they hurt. At least I'm honest about what I am, he snarled. You're no better, playing these games, manipulating people. The difference is I learned from the best. I stepped closer. You taught me how to lie, Callum. How to manipulate. How to make people see what I wanted them to see. I just used it better than you. As the agents led him away, he turned back one last time. Your father was weak. He died afraid. No, Mom said, speaking for the first time. He died protecting what mattered most. That's not weakness. It's the greatest strength there is. I watched them take him away, feeling neither triumph nor satisfaction, just a quiet certainty that Dad would have understood. Marcus touched my shoulder. It's over. But I knew it wasn't. Not completely. There would always be people like Callum, like Gwendolyn, like Judge Matthews. The only question was whether there would be enough people willing to stand against them. Dad had made his choice. Now I'd made mine. 6 months after Callum's arrest, I stood in Dad's study one last time. The house had sold yesterday, but there was one final thing I needed to do. The safe opened with a familiar click. Inside lay a single key I'd never noticed before, taped to the back wall. A sticky note accompanied it, for when you're ready. Dad. Mom appeared in the doorway. I wondered when you'd find that. You knew about it? She nodded. Arthur left instructions. Said you'd know when it was time. The key led us to a small law firm downtown, to a safety deposit box that had been paid up for 50 years. Inside, I found another letter. My dearest Rowan, if you're reading this, then you faced your storm and emerged stronger. I always knew you would. What you found wasn't just about justice. It was about understanding that true strength lies not in revenge, but in protecting others from experiencing the same pain. There's one last thing I need to tell you. The boutique you built? It wasn't just your dream. It was mine too. A legitimate business, built on honest work and real connections. Everything I wished I'd done differently. Check the account number below. It's your real inheritance. Not money from schemes or manipulation, but from 20 years of quiet investments in people who needed second chances. People like us. Use it wisely. Use it kindly. I love you, Dad. The account contained millions, all legitimate, all traceable to small business loans Dad had given over the years. Loans that had been paid back with interest and gratitude. That evening, I sat with Marcus in my boutique, watching the sunset through the windows. Sarah Peterson's sister called, he said. The foundation you started with your father's money? It's already helped 3 families avoid foreclosure. I nodded, thinking of all the other families out there, vulnerable to people like Callum. Dad's letter said strength lies in protection, not revenge. I think I finally understand what he meant. Speaking of Callum, Marcus hesitated. He's offering to testify against the remaining network. Wants a deal. Let him, I said. The truth matters more than punishment. My phone buzzed, a text from Mom. Found something else in the study. Come quick. At the house, Mom handed me a small box. Inside was Dad's old watch, the one he always wore. But something was different about it. Press the crown, Mom said. The watch face popped open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a micro SD card and another note. For the next time someone like them comes along. Because they always do. Love, Dad. I smiled, sliding the card into my phone. More evidence, more names, more connections. Dad's insurance policy for the future. He knew, didn't he? I asked Mom. Knew I'd have to face something like this eventually? He knew you'd be strong enough when you did. She squeezed my hand. The question is, what will you do now? I thought about the foundation, about Dad's network of quiet investments, about all the people still vulnerable to schemes and manipulation. I'm going to do what Dad did, I said. Watch. Protect. Build something real. And if someone else like Callum comes along? I touched the watch, thinking of all it represented. Not just evidence and protection, but a father's love and foresight, a legacy of quiet strength. Then they'll learn what we learned, I said. That real power isn't in taking. It's in giving people the means to protect themselves. As we locked up the house one last time, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the window. Stronger now, wiser, but still my father's daughter. Still carrying his legacy, but making it my own. The next morning, I opened my boutique early. A young woman waited outside, desperate, afraid, clutching papers that looked suspiciously like the ones Callum used to prepare. "Can you help me?" she asked. "Someone said you might understand." I touched Dad's watch, feeling its weight against my wrist, and opened the door wider. "Come in," I said. "Let's talk about second chances. Some legacies, I've learned, aren't about money or revenge or even justice. They're about the choices we make when facing the darkness, and the light we choose to share afterward. Dad taught me that, and I intend to teach others."